So it's really exciting to be here. It's actually exciting to do this panel every year. This is now my 4th year doing this panel, and it's always really, really fun. I think one of my favorite things about it is that the experiences are different for each one of us, but there's a common thread every time. And the weirdest thing is you could almost pick up the phone and just grab any phone number for a Bank Street alum, and you're going to hear an almost identical experience in terms of their affection for the school and what the school meant for them. It's a really powerful thing. We're not that big of a school, so our alum pool is small that we choose from, and we keep going back to the same pool, and it's the same thing every time about what the school meant to all of us here. So I'm going to start by just asking everyone here to just introduce themselves, your name, what you do now, or if you're in school, where you're in school, and then we'll go in kind of questions that we have. And do you want to start? Is that smart here?
Hey, this is not on.
Hello. All right. I'm Anuradha Bhavati, and I graduated in 1989. And I'm a writer, an author. I am an activist. I did some nonprofit management for a while. A former Marine also.
Oh, great.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Purva Bedi. I'm class of '88, so I'm older than you. You don't have to feel bad. I'm an actor. I also do some producing, and I also teach acting. And I am a parent of a child in the 6-7s.
Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Mack. I am a 94 graduate of Bank Street, and I am a portfolio manager for non-for-profit organizations for Sterling National Bank and a officer of our foundation. I'm also the treasurer of Community Board 11 in East Harlem, and just here to really give back to a school that's been really awesome to me.
Hi, my name is Autumn Neighbor. I graduated in 2015, and I'm at LaGuardia High School for drama.
My name is Kaylin Reimer. I'm also a class of 2015, and I go to York Prep School.
My name is Ryan Nye. I graduated class of 2015 as well. I currently go to Beacon High School.
All right, thank you all. Welcome, and welcome back for those of you who have not been back in a little while. It's exciting to have you here. So I prepared a few questions for you, and we'll kind of go through those as we kind of proceed with the program. And Ryan, why don't we start with you since you're holding that microphone. So you do community service outside of Bank Street, outside of Beacon. Can you tell us a little about your community service that you do?
Yeah, so I started doing community service at Bank Street's Day of Service, which really got me started in my community service experience. I did it with my aunt when she was alive. We would volunteer at the St. Aloysius soup kitchen. And so every Thanksgiving we would go as a family and we'd volunteer for Thanksgiving, and from there I have continued to work at food pantries. I help at the after school program sometimes, and it's just something that I thoroughly enjoy and was fortunate enough to be a part of at Bank Street.
Do you remember what your day of service assignment was? Was it the food pantry?
I remember one year we actually did make Valentine's Day cards at St. Aloysius, and for years after that I remember everyone thought the raking in Central Park was really cool and the shoveling of snow, and I remember everyone wanted to and signed up, and I remember my 8th grade, I believe that's what I ended up doing for Day of Service.
Thank you. Kaylin, you're at York Prep.
Yeah.
I read on your profile that you're York Prep ambassador. What does that entail?
Well, that basically means that I tour around prospective students and their families, and I think really after I left Bank Street, I was really looking for more a lot of community in the school, and I think joining that club really got me connected back in with school community, and that's something I found very important at Bank Street.
So we are working on our Bank Street Ambassadors, a program that we started rolling out this year. If you were an ambassador at Bank Street, what might you tell prospective families?
Oh, wow. That what Bank Street offers that not many other places offer is good community and kind of like a family almost inside the school. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Audrey, I was reading your profile, and it's just creativity everywhere. Acting, hold on. So I'm wondering if you can talk about creativity at Bank Street and how that was nurtured while you were here.
Well, at Bank Street, you have the ability to do so many different things and branch off into so many different areas, and I think that really allows you to be very creative. Art is incorporated into assignments. You have shop class, and I did folk dance. So all these different things that really incorporate arts and creativity into an academic setting. And I think that really is what, I don't know, stuck with me or grounded me.
Thank you. Thank you. Marissa, we talked briefly about nonprofit work, and I was telling Marissa before we started that it's always fascinating when people at Bank Street, when they graduate, no matter what field they're in, it seems to take a lean towards doing something for the public good. And I wonder if you could expand a little bit about what you're doing with nonprofits now.
So in my role as a portfolio manager, I work primarily with organizations in Westchester County and a few within New York City, primarily on the loan side, so lines of credit, mortgages for organizations that deal with individuals who have domestic violence situations, homeless shelters, mental challenges, and so our primary goal is really to reach those organizations and help them with their mission financially. And I think part of me getting to the place of wanting to do this work and kind of wanting to be in non-for-profit work really started at Bank Street, and actually also started with my parents as too. My mom was very active in the community, and she saw this school as such a good fit for me, for being an activist, for giving back. And I think that's part of the reason now that I'm back here, just trying to, really, again, give back to a community that was very nurturing to me, very safe, and take that out into my work, and take that out into what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Would it surprise you to hear that Bank Street is very much involved in social justice work now?
Not at all. And
Why is that?
I love it. So I hadn't been back here in a while, and I saw a lot of the work that the kids are doing now in terms of social justice, in terms of just being aware, which the school was great before, but just seeing more of that now is amazing. I was not as aware or woke at that age. I was calling my mom to let her know that I got to school on a payphone, so I was not really thinking about what was going on politically or how the world was really shaping my family or the people around me, and in particular people of color at this point. And I really think now it's really important for everyone, no matter what your background is, to really be aware of what's going on in the world. And even at such a young age, it's empowering. It also allows you to move forward in a direction that I don't think other kids may be able to move forward in or speak intelligently about once they get to high school or even moving into college.
Thank you. So, Porvo, we are both parents. I don't have the fortune of having my kids here, but you have your daughter here. Why was that important to you that Sanaya came here for school?
It's really interesting because I actually didn't come to Bank Street until the upper school, right? So I was here for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And before that, my early childhood education was nothing like Bank Street. I actually was an immigrant. I was born in India. We lived in Europe for 4 years, back to India, came to New York City at the age of 5, went to a really wonderful public school on the Upper East Side. But I really didn't land until I got to Bank Street, like in a huge way. I think that I had so much motion that I really didn't have a voice. I really didn't, I don't think I spoke English when I came here because I was 5 and I had been speaking French and Hindi. So for me, because Bank Street was such a huge and important part of my education for just those 4 years, when I had a child, I was like, I want to give her what I didn't have, but I know will be so great for her. So yeah, so at 16 months, she started at the family center. And, family center, and now she's at the school for children.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you still speak multiple languages?
They're in there.
So we want to take credit for that too. So you're an author and you have a new book coming out. Would you tell us about that book?
Yeah, sure. It's coming out on March 26th. It's called Unbecoming, not to be mistaken with Becoming, another great author.
I don't know which. Are you going to read it at the Barclays Center this week? It's coming. All right, we'll get that.
Already. I came up with my title first, though.
I know you did.
It's a memoir. It's Unbecoming, a memoir of disobedience, and it's a book about my journey in and out of the Marine Corps and being a woman and a woman of color and a queer woman of color in the Marines. And really it's a story, I like to start with my parents. It's about being a daughter of immigrants and what it was like growing up in New York City and not feeling like I belonged anywhere. And that sense of not belonging carried me into the military, which was a very shocking experience. Like I did not have a highly militarized upbringing. I was like just shy, quiet kid and liked the arts and was very into social justice issues. And then in the Marines I had quite an awakening because it was a pretty fierce organization and women are still not treated well there. So it kind of reawakened this feeling of wanting to fight for people, and ended up leaving very fired up and starting an organization to help service women who were being harassed, discriminated, or assaulted within the military. And so that's the story.
Thank you. Again, I learned something new about you, that you are a child of immigrants. That makes 3 of us at least. I don't know if anybody else on the panel. But can I start here and ask you your parents' understanding of Bank Street? That was very interesting in my household. As immigrant parents didn't really understand what progressive education was about in our household. And so I have 2 brothers, so 3 of us. And my dad often said that it wasn't until the 3rd one that I figured out what Bank Street was all about. And I won't tell you how many years later that was. It was a while. But it was just so different from his style of education. How did your families understand Bank Street when you first got here?
They loved it, God. So my parents were very much tiger parents, if that's a thing. I don't really hear about tiger moms, but Dad was pretty fierce too. And both academics, and so they sort of walked around with, I think, an elitist philosophy about education, how kids were supposed to be raised in this country. And so Bank Street actually provided them with all of that, and yet provided them with the sense of their daughter being so safe and loved and introduced to all the ideas in the world. And they still talk about Bank Street. Yeah.
It's funny, my parents were friends with your parents, I don't know if you remember this, because my mother was an academic as well, still is. And I really think it was one of those things, but they were immigrants, they really valued education very highly, and they moved to the West Side, and they just heard Bank Street was a good school. Like, that was all they were going on. They knew nothing about progressive education. It was really quite by accident that I think I landed up here. Like, someone they really trusted, maybe it was your parents, told them Bank Street is a good school. But I think they would agree that it had the biggest impact on me in terms of my education. Suddenly they also became participants in my education, which they hadn't been before. I just sort of went to school before that, but they showed up here, right? Because I was in performances and concerts and the revels. So I think that Bank Street kind of forced them to be more present in my education, in my early education, which they kind of didn't have to be at my previous school.
A real funny random story. Do you know why my parents chose Bank Street? Of course you know this. The tree. My mom thought any school that had a tree growing in it must take care of kids really well. True story. So we'll start with the high school. Okay, we're going to jump around a little bit, but just thinking about you're all getting ready to go off to college. And I'm wondering what you feel your high schools could have learned from Bank Street. So if you were to take some lessons from Bank Street and go to your high schools to say, you know what you should be doing as I leave this place, but not till you give my degree. Here's what you should be doing that my middle school did. What would you offer your high schools?
Sure. I would say the way that discussions are based and held in class, we don't do a lot of that at my high school. And really examining issues from all possible sides is something else that we don't do a lot of and that I really miss about Bank Street. I think also having a group of teachers who are so invested in you and know exactly what's going on with you, and having a group of students who are also you're building off of, and I have that at my school too. It's just a lot bigger, and the teachers are less involved and less just focused on developing new ideas and curriculums. So I think that is something that I wish was more incorporated that Bank Street really has.
I think kind of engagement in the world's kind of talking about what's going on in the world. And I know a lot of times, for example, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we would watch like his speech and stuff like that, and we talk about like what's going on in the news, and a lot of that stuff. And at my school right now, I don't really find that like stuff like that where talk things through. It's kind of just a place to go and do your work, but I feel like Bank Street brought a whole community and discussion through it.
I'd like to say that Beacon, the high school I go to now, is fairly similar in Bank Street in the way that they're very aware of like social justice work. But I realized my sophomore year when I took my global history class that everyone has like their own beliefs, everyone has their own philosophies, and everyone has their own ideas and notions of how things are supposed to work. And I was well aware of that at Bank Street. I was well aware that everyone has different ideas, and that's okay. You may not agree with everyone's ideas, but at Beacon, everyone really thinks a lot about what they're going to say before they say it. And I think that has to do with people not really feeling comfortable enough to speak their minds, and they're not really accepted for who they are and what they believe in. I feel Bank Street did that. I was extremely fortunate to have a sort of experience like that when I was really young, where I feel confident enough to speak how I feel and what I believe, and be comfortable with that. And whether that makes me wrong or right, it doesn't matter, because that's how I feel and that's how I interpret the world and how things work, and that's just me being me. And I feel like my high school really needs to reflect on the population and how judgmental they tend to be at times.
Terrific, thank you. And for the other panelists, if you feel like you want to jump in on some question is really speaking to you, feel free to interrupt me and just jump right in. Marissa, you went to a public school after Bank Street. Do you remember what that transition was like? And a couple of students here are also public school. What that transition was like when you left Bank Street?
Yeah, so I actually went to LaGuardia. I was a vocal major. And
did you say you were going to sing now?
I did not.
You did not, okay.
I said I'm going to keep people here. But I was a good singer. Well, it's good singer. But I went to LaGuardia, vocal major, and it was a little bit of a shock. Our graduating class was, for all the different majors, I think maybe like 400. My department was not as big, right? But I think it was a great adjustment for me just to be able to see, okay, well, I'm going from this school where I had been here since I was 6. So I knew the parents, I knew your grandparents, I knew where you lived, I knew everything about everyone, right? Which is great, and I loved it, and I think it was the best thing for me at that time. But I also did enjoy going to a bigger school, because then what comes next is college, right? So for me, that was a great transition to be able to say, look, I was in this smaller environment where I really knew people, I really got to know them really well, it was a safe environment, but I was able to adjust, right? I was able to get to know people, I formed my own clique, I formed my, my circle and my friends, so it was fine, it was a good transition. for me. So it can be done, and it's something that, even in this smaller environment where you really know people, you can actually go into a bigger setting and still feel okay and still feel confident in who you are and your experience at Bank Street.
I'd love to open that up. If anyone else wants to jump in on that too, just that notion of this transition to high school. Bank Street has an end game, right? We finish in 8th grade, and as Jed said, that's by design. And so if you're making a decision about going to a K-8 school, you want to at least feel that the tools that you get there are going to prepare you for high school. Does anyone else want to talk about their transition as they move from Bank Street? Ryan, you want to do it?
So I remember when, in terms of the question about one of my parents chose Bank Street, my dad went to public school in Jamaica, Queens for all of his life throughout high school. And my mom would always joke around with me and say like, oh, your dad's the only one who went to public school, and now I guess you're gonna be number 2. And I had this whole idea of what I thought public school was gonna be. And my dad was telling me like, oh, there are cliques, you stay away from these kind of people, stay away from that kind of people, you'll find your gray area where you're supposed to belong. And I was frightened. I felt so like scared of this idea of what my dad told me at least what public school was. And then when I got there, I just felt like, again, comfortable to just be myself. And then the freshman year, I do admit my first few months were a bit like strange, going to a really larger school. Beacons, I think my class is about a little under 400 people compared to my graduating class of like 32 people at Bank Street. And I was also, I guess, a lifer, which is bad terminology now, but I've gone here since I was 3 years old. And I remember I've known Kaylin and Autumn for a good majority of my life. And I was confident in what I've learned from the people that I was around at a very young age to go into a community that I had never been a part of before and just feel comfortable to learn and be in a different environment. I wasn't really too frightened when I was actually in that place. I felt very comfortable, and I felt like I always had Bank Street to thank for that.
Thank you.
For me, I also went to a big high school after Bronx Science. I mean, that beats your 400. 750 people in my class. and I look at my daughter Sanaya and the 6-7s, and I think about my transition too. And I think that actually Bank Street, because of the focus on like getting you comfortable on who you are, in your voice, in your skin, that there is a confidence and an adaptability that we learn at Bank Street, because I didn't have any trouble at Bronx Science. I thrived, I adapted. I then chose a tiny college to go to because I was like, okay, that's good, now I need something else. But I watch my daughter, and she's 6.5, but I see she has a confidence, a swagger. She's actually comfortable talking to strangers. If she was here right now, she'd want to talk to all of you. And I do think that's a Bank Street thing. Yeah.
Did she tell you she came to visit me the other day?
No. Yes, she said that she saw pictures of us from when we were
11 and 12.
All those yearbooks and all that. It was a lot of fun. Great. So I wonder too if you had the same experience that I had. When I went on to high school and when I went on to college, I found myself explaining what Bank Street was. Like no one understood, and I was like, it's kind of like this experiment, and no one could really get it. And I wonder if any of you experienced that same thing in your high schools, your college, or even your workplaces as adults, that you're explaining what Bank Street was to folks. And anyone can take this one.
Well, for me, I remember when I first started talking about graduating from 8th grade, I was like, yeah, my class was 32 people. And then some people would tell me like they had like 100 plus classes, and I was like shocked. I never understood, I never even like thought that was a thing that would happen. I just imagined everyone had a very like close-knit experience similar to what I had. And I know I told people like, for me, Bank Street was like an extension of my family. Like I've known, I've known some of my classmates like all majority of my life. And I still come and visit, and I see teachers. I see Karen as a teacher that has been here since I was 3. And then I look at her and I'm just like, wow. To me she still looks the same. It's like she hasn't aged. And then I'm just like, wow, it's been like my whole life. And my sister went here before me, And my family had been here for like, I guess 5 years. My sister's 5 years older than me. Been here longer than I was even born. Bank Street was just sort of like a family that I was born into.
Karen feels the same way about you, Ryan. She looks at you and says you look exactly the same.
I feel like Cookie has not
Cookie is the
aged,
chick.
like she's the same.
Cookie was here.
We agree.
She came in with us.
That's right.
Yeah.
We were her first year, Cookie. Anuradha, did you have that experience? Do people get Bank Street when you get out in the world? Have they heard of it?
No, this is like my special little place. I feel like,
You don't share.
especially since I, when I joined the military and then I started doing advocacy for veterans, like I've bridged into a whole new world of America, right? Which we don't talk about too much in New York City or the Upper West Side. So, or we do with fear and horror sometimes, and so, and that's just the way it is. We live in a polarized country, but. And so it's interesting, like I think, and I say this in complete jest, but this is sort of the hippie commie version of experience in America for many of the people I work with now. And that's okay, right? But it's like, for me, it's the place where I learned to love myself and love other people who are different than me, and realize are the things that make us different are the things that make us all strong together. And so I've carried that with me wherever I go. And I think because of that, it's been easier for me to actually build bridges with people who are very different, again, from folks in New York City. And so I can see common humanity in folks that I did not grow up with here in New York. And somehow, those bridges are built, right? But that starts with Bank Street. Probably my parents too, but with Bank Street.
Audrey, can I ask you a question? I'm thinking about your memories of Bank Street, and I'm wondering if you have a favorite memory that you share. And I'm going to open this up to everybody else as well, but I'm going to start with Audrey just because who doesn't want to share a favorite memory, right? So why don't you start?
I think one of my favorite memories of Bank Street, and there are a lot, but one of the early ones is when we did this huge model, I think in the 7th, 8th, and of the Hudson River. I don't know if you still do that or you guys did that. But putting that together and learning about how the country was settled through that model is one of my favorite learning experiences, and also I think one of my favorite memories from my time here. Yeah.
Thank you. Other favorite memories? Caleb?
Yeah. So, when I was in like 4th grade, we did a play on Egyptian history, and I just remember that thing that, and I know my brother, he's in 4th grade here at Bank Street now, and I know he's going to do that and later. And I'm just thinking, how, when I was in 4th grade, how did the class like put it together? And I think that's like a lot of things, like, and just that memory of like, doing something so big like that at such a young age is, and working together with other people and doing that is like, that's like a big memory of. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think for me, I'm not sure if you guys still go to Nature's Classroom in Hillside or away? No?
An overnight trip?
Overnight, yeah.
We do overnight trips.
Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th.
Yeah, we did a number of those, and it was great because they were more or less team building exercises, ways for us to get to know each other outside of the classroom. We also interacted with other organizations and other schools, which was amazing. So for me, that was something that really stood out. And then another area was also, when I first came in, I was in the 6th, 7th with Amy Waterbury, who has since passed. But we took care of a rabbit by the name of Phoebe, who was, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't have any pets, but that was like our class pet. And we all took care of it, we all nurtured it, and it was such a wonderful experience, especially coming into the school. So those are more or less like my favorite memories of Bank Street.
Thank you. Thank you. So we can move on down this way, is that okay?
Oh.
No.
Sure. I was just thinking about the 8th grade curriculum for me where we're studying government. Were you in Sam's class with me?
Totally.
You were in Toby's. And, well, we had to pass a bill. And this is 1988, and it was a bill about AIDS. I think it was about free condoms. Is that possible? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Yes.
That's possible.
Yeah. And we had to role play that we were different senators and congresspeople that we had researched. We had to be witnesses. And I mean, I understood government, and that's still how I understand government and how bills get passed. I mean, that's just crazy to me that like this thing I learned in 8th grade has stayed with me my entire life. I mean, we had so much fun with it. You know, we all played ridiculous characters, but it was such a part of like the news, current events, understanding the Constitution, and just, I mean, that's the thing about the curriculum, is like it's so integrated and you're so immersed in it that it stays with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone want to say? Sure.
Yeah, I'm just reminded of, this was in Toby's 13s class, and I was a big kid then, and we had a coffee house. Am I making this up? Anybody? This is just me and my memory.
Anything could happen.
We had a coffee house. I remember we dimmed the lights in the classroom, and we all wrote personal pieces about our lives. And I remember writing about one of my parents' friends who had died of AIDS. And this was the late 80s, and so this was sort of fairly new still for a lot of people in the country. And there's such an intimacy in the room, you know, for such a painful thing for a kid to kind of process. I remember my friend was going through a really hard time that year because her parents were getting divorced, and she wrote about that, and she had a gift. I think we all knew it at that. You know, she was an artist, and she was actually really diving into her feelings, and again, this feeling of safe space, you know, which is hard to create anywhere in the world, but Bank Street always did it. And you know, even in this book that I wrote, there's scenes from Bank Street, which I like, and I just, there's always this feeling of teachers coming around and fellow students, and I mean, that is it's such a tender thing, and I think for children, so important to know that they can do that for one another, to see it modeled in adults, right? To take care of your fellow human beings. That was happening everywhere, but it was happening in a coffee house. So.
Great, thank you. Ryan, did you get to your favorite memory?
No,
You did, go ahead.
It starts off a bit rough. My story starts, I got grounded by my mom for probably doing something I really shouldn't have done. And it was just like, you know, it was 6th grade, and I remember my mom was like, you can't go on TV, you can't play on the computer, you can't do X, Y, Z. And I was like, my life is over. What am I going to do with like all the time in the day? And I remember going to school and telling my 6th grade teacher, Jamie, that I got grounded, and I was so frustrated. And I remember she like took out this notebook she had, and she was like, why don't you write? And I really, I think in that moment, that's when I started writing a lot. I do a lot of poetry. I like to just write for fun occasionally when I get the time. And I think that was one of my favorite moments with Jamie, my 6th grade teacher.
Yeah, thank you, cool. So teachers actually the next thing that I was going to go to anyway, and a lot of our teachers have changed over these years, and some of them are probably still here. But I'm wondering if you could share if you think of, we don't like to use the word favorite too much here, but a teacher that really resonated with you, that had an impact on your experience here, and maybe you could describe that teacher for us and what that person meant to you at Bank Street. So anybody can start with that one as you're thinking about it. I have mine, but they don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from me.
I can think of a few teachers off the top of my head. Should I say their name or?
If you want, I'm sure they'd appreciate it, right?
A teacher that first came to mind was Margaret. She was my 7th grade humanities teacher. And I remember I wasn't really interested in humanities, like whether it was English or history, it wasn't really my thing at that time. I really enjoyed math and science. And I remember Margaret just had a way of like presenting every single lesson in every single class that just always got me really invested in like my history or English or anything I was learning in humanities that day. And I know, like, especially in addition to just Margaret Jo, also my 8th grade teacher, she really got me into like learning about the politics and the country and what it's founded on and the beliefs and how the country got to the place where it is today. And I remember just really being extremely prepared when I went into high school because of those 2 teachers especially.
Thank you.
Sandra Pizzella? Yeah. Oh my God. She was I wish she still taught here. She was my 7th grade teacher too. And the things that I carry from her really aren't about the stuff you learn in school. I mean, my friend Laura Wood and we did this scheme, we were very mischievous, where we wrote a fake diary. Then we went to her house in Cape Cod and threw it and battered it so it looked real. Then we found it in the girls' bathroom. And then we were reading this fake diary that we found and being like, oh my gosh. And Sandra pulled me aside and she's like, think about the person who wrote that diary. I mean, it was fake. But I was just like, oh yeah, this is awful. What are we doing? And she just totally shifted my perspective on this funny, hilarious thing we were doing. And then the other thing that Sandra told me that stays with me, because clearly no one had told me this until I was 12, is think before you speak. And before you act. I think I've always been somebody who just dives in and jumps in. It's like, oh, just take a second. It's like, oh, thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
I remember in 8th grade, for the first time, we really had to write your typical essay, and the way of writing a typical essay that Joe taught me is what I still use to write essays in high school, or the basis of what I use, and the approach to writing, I think, in general, that I learned from my teachers here has really shaped me. And also Tracy in 8th grade. I was always in math very afraid that I would get something wrong, and I remember for the first time at Bank Street being really able to feel as though I didn't care and just caring about the learning aspect of it rather than the getting it right. And that was true throughout, but also really consolidated in 8th grade.
Yeah, so I feel it's so hard just to pick one teacher, but I feel like every single teacher brought something to at least one thing to the table, no matter what. And as I was saying about it, there's just little things that I remember one teacher telling, the way to write an email, the way to raise your hands. Even though that might have not been my favorite teacher, they still taught valuable life lessons. And Joe and Tracy, who I had in 8th grade, also were very, very good, and also just helped the transition from middle school to high school, really.
Thank you.
I mentioned Amy, and this was my first experience, so she is on that list. Cookie, who was in every area from sports to putting on Bye Bye Birdie and Fiddler on the Roof, which she was just someone who was encouraging in every area while I was at Bank Street. So whether I was on the soccer team, basketball team, me and another individual, Sabina Neugebauer, we were both the leads for all the plays. But she was encouraging in every area while I was here, which I think is great, that you can have someone that can move with you and that can encourage you and just help you as you are growing in this environment.
Do you want a t-shirt moment as well?
I mean, there's George Burns, who's still here, so you get to experience or your children do if they come here. I don't remember a single thing he taught me.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? But
Nope.
I just remember
Surprise.
him.
Yeah.
Twinkling eyes, enthusiasm, passion, love, for everything we were doing. You know, there was no end to energy, and still going strong. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all. Well, I'm going to ask one more question of the panel. Then we don't often get to get audience questions, and so if you have one or you have one brewing, you can kind of formulate it, and then we'll come to you in a second. I'm thinking about this. We hear people talk about current climate all the time. You know, in today's climate. You know, and I think a lot about what a Bank Street education or what a Bank Street student or graduate can offer the world. And I wonder if you can capture some of that for you. What do you think a Bank Street graduate has to offer the world, especially in this current climate? So anybody can start with that notion, but what do you think a Bank Street graduate has to offer the world?
I think people who go to Bank Street are often very able to speak their minds and to voice their opinions and to stand up for other people. And I found that a lot of my high school and from what my friends from Bank Street have described about their high schools. So I think that really sets Bank Street grads apart. And I'm sure that's true of other people, but I particularly found that of Bank Street alum. And also listening. I think that people here, there's so much focus on community and working together that you really value listening and listening to other people. And I found in high school that that's also very rare. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Two things I thought that are set aside Bank Street people from other people that I've met is I still work at the summer camp over the summers, and I noticed that two things that I often find most common about like all the kids overall is that they're really good teamwork people and they're really good team players. No one ever like sort of tries to take control and sort of dictate the other kids. Like everyone like always they work together. They see each other as like just one big team, and they've always done that. Ever since I was a kid, I remember always doing teamwork, and now looking at the other kids as they're in summer camp, they still do that. And also, I'd like to say that a lot of the Bank Street people never judge a book by its cover. And they always get to know people, they always get to know different things before they ever sort of come to their own ideas or their own beliefs, their own consensus. Like they're very open-minded, they listen, they talk, they just express however they're feeling, they just take it all in, and they are very good at being very welcoming and very open to different people.
Thank you. Galen?
Yeah, I think listening, I think learning how to listen to other people, I mean that sounds so simple, but if you meet other people, a lot of other people don't know how to listen and solve like conflicts and issues, even just on a minor scale, and I think like Bank Street taught me a lot of how to do that. And a lot of stuff about kind of if you want to make a change in the world, like go out and do it, kind of things, like stuff like the day of service where like we would go outside and do change as opposed to like thinking about it or just talking about it. And I think like some little things, some big things, and just all that, like learning that you can create change.
Thank you.
I think the word that's been common has been a safe. I think we've all mentioned it at some point in time during this conversation. And so I think being empathetic and being able to listen to other people and kind of hear where they're coming from is something that was built here, right? We have small classes, we have people that come from different backgrounds, different economic backgrounds as well. And so I think being able to say that maybe someone is not identical to me in where they come from, in you know, again, in their background, being able to take that out into the world is extremely important. And if you're not in a place where you're already with people of diverse backgrounds, more than likely you're not going to be able to kind of take that into different spaces. So it's perfect here. You have that environment here already, you can now take that out into the world and do something with it.
Yeah, echoing what you said and sort of thinking about my own daughter, and she sort of will come home and just have a nugget for me, just kind of a random statement. And so the other day, a few weeks ago, but it really stuck with me, she said, "Mom, you know, you don't have to agree with somebody for them to be a part of your community." And like, that's a lesson for our current climate, right? And I was just like, oh, you're only 6.5. But that very much, like, how do we bridge the divide with people who we don't agree with? How do we resolve conflict? I think that comes up all the time, and the way we handle it here is what we graduates offer to the world. Yeah.
I feel like kindness and compassion, which are oftentimes considered soft skills or have been in like our national past, and now for me, I see these as such hard skills and necessary and critical for life experience and critical for national like community. That's what I got most of from Bank Street. Like you do not leave somebody behind. You do not leave somebody behind, which ironically is sort of what the military says as well. But that's a Bank Street philosophy. We stick up for people. Bullying is not a thing. That is not okay. It is never okay. And that was fiercely inculcated in me here, and I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you. And I'm going to come to the audience. So I was just going to say that when I came back to work here was when I started to see the design for how all of that happens. I don't know if you recognize it without real reflection of how do you create all of these characteristics that you just mentioned, the safe space, the kindness, and compassion. But there's a design to it. It's not by accident. The teachers work on it. They figure these things out. They put you in a room. It's magical, but it's not by accident. It's really intentional, which is exciting to see from the other side. It kind of burst the bubble a little. Like I thought it was a mythical thing, but you knew what you were doing. Anyway, so let's get questions from the audience. Any questions that our audience members might have for our panelists? And we're happy to answer those. And if not, that's okay.
Yeah, let me just follow on what you just said around, could the Bank Street model, something for the entire panel, could that be replicated elsewhere? Or is it so special, so unique that this is the footprint and it can only happen here? And if you think it can be replicated, what are the elements and what should we be replicating it in other places, perhaps as a sort of a public school model or what have you?
That just for the back, in case Lucy didn't hear, can the Bank Street model be replicated elsewhere, and how and where? But is this just something that has to happen here? Can it extend beyond Bank Street?
I think part of it is the mixture of the people that you have working here, right, and the philosophy and the mission. So wherever you go, right, no matter what school it is, there's going to be a baseline for where you're starting from or what you're growing from. So if that baseline is community, if it's bringing people together, if it's people from different areas, you have to start with that and then build out. But I think a big portion of it has to do with the people that are here and kind of their inner feelings, what they're looking to accomplish. So you could say maybe it could be replicated someplace else, but it has to do with the people, and people are individuals, right? So as you come together, you may want to do it the same someplace else, but it may not necessarily come out the same way. It's the mixture of the people that you have working on the same mission. And that could be for a school, that could be for more or less like any situation. So I feel like it's the people that you have that make up the organization, that make up the mission, that make up the goal, that make up the outcome of the kids that are here. That's my opinion.
I think a lot about Bank Street as being one of the most unique schools in that we have a public purpose through our college. My mother worked here, as Jed mentioned. My whole family came through here somehow or another. Even my wife got her graduate degree here. But my wife was here as a graduate student. My two brothers, my cousins were here. My mother came to work here after I graduated. And my mother was the Dean of Continuing Education for 20 some odd years. And she advanced Bank Street's public purpose. She was working with a prison program in Bedford Hills, teaching women how life skills, but the Bank Street approach. And she traveled to Finland and worked with educators out there. It's fascinating how the Bank Street is one of the few places that you can meet people who went to Bank Street who didn't grow up here. because of the college experience, and they know about Bank Street. So they're starting schools in Brooklyn and in the Bronx. And in my neighborhood in Fort Greene, there are 3 Bank Street started schools who are just educators who either went to Bank Street as kids or went there as colleges. And so it's a fascinating experiment. Like I said, I don't know if this is like any other place because of that reach, but I do know the reach is out there. There are definitely people trying to model Bank Street education all over the place. Eric?
Yeah, just one of the things I'd like to point out is, I'm the class of 58, and everything you were talking about was going on in my class. So that's 60-odd years of recreation of an experience that is then taken outward by all of you. So that really speaks to the teachers, the philosophy, the directors of the school, again and again and again, recreating all that experience that you were talking about. And I think that's an important point to understand.
Thank you. I know it's fascinating to see 21st century skills listed recently, and you look back at our credo and you're like, oh yeah, they're all there. 21st century. I saw a hand up top, yes?
Sure. I'd love to hear more. It's amazing so many of you kind of have been here for so long. And I'm wondering too how it was for those of you either who came in like at upper school or for those of you who were here and had to integrate a new community member into, especially sort of, into one of the non-entry point grades, right, like upper school. How did the Bank Street philosophy help that happen, both for those of you who were coming in or those of you who were sort of welcoming someone here?
That's great, thank you. How do you join the community, especially starting later? Yeah. Are you the only person on the panel that joined late? Yeah?
I think so.
Okay.
It was so trippy. It was so weird. I remember my first day or 2 days in Edna's with you, Javaid, and I remember the weird experience of everybody, of feeling like everybody was my friend. Because I was like, oh, because it was very strange. I didn't have to make an effort. I remember this girl Jessica came up to me, and Danica came, and people just came up to me. And then very quickly, Danica and I started this great game where she out of the blue started writing letters to me, placing them 10 years in the future. Right? What a great idea, though. And she would mail them to me, and so we had this amazing. Like I said before, I felt like I landed. And now, of course, I'm like, what's crazy is all those other kids had known each other for. We were in the 10s, 11s, so they'd known each other for 6, 7 years for all of their education, maybe longer. And I was a newbie, but I felt very welcomed. At lunchtime, I remember I always had people to sit with. I very quickly learned the games of how people tried to give their food away. I didn't understand why everyone was trying to get rid of their lunch. Do you remember that?
No, I ate all of my lunch.
Just the girl. But yeah, it surprises me now how easy it was to just kind of drop right in. Yeah.
And I will say, one thing that's always fascinated me in this seat is seeing how quickly new students, I can't tell them apart. It's within maybe a few days, maybe a week, and all of a sudden I'm like, isn't she new? Running around like anyone else, and I don't think it's easy for everyone. These are middle school years for us, and so those are often tricky and awkward. But it is by design. Those buddy groups, those small partner work, those small collaborative models, each designed to get you someone new that you're going to work with, and then we buddy your classes. You'll get a buddy that you come in with, so you can have a family you connect with over the summer. And a lot of the families who are here have served in that role, introducing new kids to the school, which is pretty amazing.
I still have all of the phone numbers memorized of 8 different girlfriends from when I was 10, 11, 12.
From the prank call.
I was always I was surprised when I would just know who to call one after the other to chat. So, yeah.
I promised Anurada, she said she had a story that she remembered, and I said, all right, I'm not going to forget. You get to tell your story. But can I? All right, you go ahead and tell your story.
So 38 years ago was the last time I saw Javaid, and it was really saw you because you were a year ahead. So it was the last time we were in a classroom together, and Michael Jackson had just come out with this Thriller album. And I was very shy and timid back then, and Javaid and like the entire class was dancing, but for some reason, like he was closest to me and I was watching him have all this fun. I think it was Beat It, actually. And yeah, and so free and happy, and I was just miserable because I wanted to dance, but I was too shy to dance, and so I went into the corner and cried.
Oh my God.
It's true, but I have this, like I still have this memory of you being so happy, which you're supposed to be a model, I still aspire to.
That's saying, I heard Janae made me cry, but you heard.
It's hilarious, I still remember that. But yeah, that's my Michael Jackson
That's an
story.
awesome story. Thank you. That was well worth it. Well worth it. Any other questions from the audience? Lucy?
Well, I'm in the middle school, but I never get to see how the college and the school for children interact with each other. And I know that like there have been student teachers who really affected me, but I'm just wondering, like, does that go the other way? Do they feel like that is like affects their experience in college?
I mean, having worked
Like, do you feel
with our
that,
kids.
how do you feel that the college and the middle and the school for children like interact with each other, and like do you feel like that's like how do you feel like that's important to the like experiment with this next year?
That's amazing. Do any of you have experience that you remember as kids? It's sometimes difficult to remember who these people were. I remember that experience too, having all these folks in my classroom all the time and not realizing until later, oh, those were graduate students, or these or that, you know. And I don't know if do you have memories like that of working directly with the grad program or with associate or assistant teachers, student teachers? Auden, you do?
I remember having a lot of student teachers coming in and just really enjoying getting to know a new person and getting to work with a new person and doing a lot of cool projects. And I think they brought in different ideas. We tried out different stuff. I'm not sure specifically what that stuff was and if it differed from the larger curriculum, but I do remember having those people come in and really loving that.
Jed often refers to Bank Street as like a teaching hospital of sorts. And so this is where our teachers come and they learn how to teach. And again, what's fascinating, you talk about like the effect, the reverse effect. Once you've worked here, your lens forever changes. You know, it doesn't really matter where you could work at a traditional school. I worked at a very traditional school, and I was a really progressive educator inside of my classroom. It just, you know that there's a different way to educate a child or to be educated, as all of us were. And I think that forever influences both ways. You know, so the teachers who leave here, who came to the grad school and worked with us, they leave and they go do great things and try to replicate what they learned at Bank Street in their next school if they're not here anymore. Hope that answers what you were thinking. Thanks, Lucy. There's one more in here.
I wanted to ask you about friendships, and I guess two parts to the question. One, how did your friendships evolve once everybody moved on to different high schools, and what role did friendships from Bank Street play as you transition into new communities? And then have you kept any friends for life from the years that you spent here?
That's my final question.
So I actually just went to the house of one of my classmates who lives in New Rochelle 2 weeks ago, just like 10 minutes from me work-wise, and we stayed in touch. She went to Spence, I went to LaGuardia, and went to different colleges, but we stayed in contact. Actually, I'm in contact with a number of people from Bank Street still. Obviously, Facebook helps with that a lot, but I actually see people, right? And I know their families, like I've been in contact with their kids. I know someone from my class actually works here and her kids are here. So we're still, I don't know, it's still like a community, you still know people, you ask about people and their families, and if you've been here for a while, or if your child was here, or if you were here for a while, you kind of have that connection with people, you know.
I take the subway to school every morning with my friend who I went to school with here for 10 years, and she's still my best friend. And I still see people from my year. So for me, I feel like the friendships that I made here are really unlike many that I've made elsewhere, and really strong and amazing. And I really value them, and I've hung on to them.
my younger brother he has 3 sets of friendship groups. His Bank Street friends, his high school friends, and his college friends, and they don't often come together. But his Bank Street friends years ago created a plan to start a school, and this is what they wanted to do. He's now a professor at Clemson, but this was all of the Bank Street guys. They all got together. I think we saw 3 of those guys applying their kids in the school in the last few years here. One is in school now. And it's amazing what that connection, what it's meant. And even for me, I mean, I see some faces here, I won't shout everybody out, but like, you know, I grew up in people's houses who are here in this room, who still mean the world to me. And this summer I was able to reconnect with a number of my classmates, unfortunately over a loss, but it was really, we fell right back in step. Like it was just a bond, and that mattered so much. Any other questions from the audience? All right, we're at the end of our rope over here. So I'm going to do one last thing, which is a Bank Street word association. Can we do that? Is that okay? So you're going to need your mic ready, and I'm going to shout out a Bank Street thing, and then you can say the first thing that comes to mind. How's that sound? Is that scary?
Interrupt each other.
Maybe we'll go in rows. We can go in order. Is that all right? Where should we start? Ryan, you want to start? Ryan's ready. No. We're starting. Okay, we're starting. Washington, D.C.
Major Owens, Congressional Black Caucus.
Wow. We met Major Owens too.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember that as a...
I didn't remember that T-set. Washington, D.C. Same one.
Throwing things out the window to other people that were staying at the 4-H club.
Terrible. Yes.
Next steps. About to graduate. Next up.
Seeing the Congress buildings was, I didn't really know what they looked like, so that was something that really stuck with me.
Yeah, so we got to meet all these different congressmen and women, and one of them was, and what we met was Charlie Rangel, who we each studied a congressman and woman in school, and Charlie Rangel was the one who I did a specific study on, and it was just so like this person who I studied. And I'll be watching like a documentary now, and I'll see him in it, and I'll be like,
You had that great voice.
Senator John Lewis, we met him on our 8th grade trip. I remember I just started doing some like research with my family about SNCC, and I never really learned about SNCC before, and then I got to meet John Lewis, and I was like so amazed at the man, and meeting him in person was just truly a really amazing experience.
Great.
Now I wish I'd taken Sandra's advice to think before I speak. Because now I'm like, oh, and also like we went to the theater and saw where Lincoln had been shot, and that was so cool. I shouldn't go second.
Yeah. Point taken. Ryan, we're going to start with you in this side. So we'll do one last one, just for time-wise. The debt.
Tag.
one word?
Yeah. Well, we clearly don't follow any procedure. Who wants to start now? Go for it.
Potlucks, just like a little backstory, there would always be kind of potlucks on the deck. And that like, potluck mornings, you just wake up and you know you're gonna be having a good breakfast. And I have a funny story to, can I, or do you want me?
Dude, do what you gotta do, man. Tell your story.
So my mom would bring these like eggs, and they were like not the best smelling eggs. And like I'd be excited, like people would get like absolute bagels, and I was like, so, and of course, like, and so my mom pulled out the eggs, and I'm like, oh no. And there was one kid, and I always felt sick. The one kid who liked the eggs, and it was just like so great that like someone liked the eggs. It was a great. It was just great. Like, there's something for everybody.
Something for everybody. On that note, folks, this is that's perfect. All right.
Imagination. I remember we would have like idea competitions, and then whoever had the best idea, we would act out their idea. And I remember that being really fun.
The deck was trouble. So there was like the choice between the roof or the deck. And so when we went to the deck, there was always like someone getting stuck in a tire or somebody like building something that was like, what are you doing? Like it was just always a lot of fun, a lot of creativity, but it was just, it was trouble. It was always trouble. Good trouble.
Good trouble.
Yeah.
The deck is one of the reasons my daughter is enrolled in this school at the age of 16 months, because I missed out on the deck, but all of my friends would talk about how great the deck had been.
I was wondering if you were going to have something to do. Yeah.
I just remember school photos. I have this strong image of all of those class photos. I don't even remember being on the deck, I just remember the photos.
Superimposed. I can't thank you all enough for being here. This was so much fun. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. All right, good. So there's food here, a lot of it. So please come down and enjoy food. And thank you so much for making it out in this cold, cold weather.